In the heart of the city, a new story awakens, bringing urban culture to life. Inspire, entertain, and empower, sparking conversations and celebrate creativity. PowerVault Network. Live and learn.
More than 3 years after he went on a shooting rampage that began in a courtroom and left 4 dead, including a judge and a federal agent, a jury in Atlanta convicted Brian Nichols on every charge against him. A total of 54 guilty verdicts were read in open court Friday after a 4-month trial and 12 hours of deliberation. Prosecutors wanted the death penalty, but 12 jurors couldn't agree on execution. There were 3 holdouts. Judge James Bodiford, who imposed the toughest sentence allowed by law, ended Saturday's hearing with a grave warning.
Do not ever trust him again, because there's been ample evidence that trusting Mr. Nichols will get you killed.
In an emotionally charged news conference, even the lead prosecutor broke down.
We fought for justice, for 4 wonderful people, for innocent people.
Many family members of the victims were not satisfied with the sentence, like the daughter of a slain court reporter.
My family and I watched in horror and disgust.
Wife of a deputy sheriff.
He never once showed to me any remorse, constantly sitting in his chair at the defense table with a smirk on his face.
And the wife of a federal agent, Nichols' final victim.
Brian Nichols' parents raised an extremely evil person.
It took the jury 12 hours of deliberations to find the 36-year-old Nichols guilty. He was being escorted to a courtroom where he was being tried for rape in March of 2005 when he beat the deputy guarding him, stole her gun, and began shooting.
Brian Nichols was convicted in the March 2005 killings of a judge, a court reporter, a sheriff's deputy, and a federal agent. Violence that began at the Fulton County Court.
Me personally, and I'm gonna keep it 100. A lot of people don't know that. I talk to Brian Nichols on the phone since he went out there. What's up, player? Man, hey, man, we watching what you do, man. I like the movie Superfly. Ooh, he said all that.
For the money in the flash. This new crew, they have cartel connections.
I got a show called The Shit Show. It's like the new Apollo on steroids. But my passion right now, I started a thing called Hiking with Bank, bro. That's the best shit I ever did in my life. Hiking with Bank. I do that once a month with my dog Red. Finally at peace. 2005, man. I was on bullshit around that time. I ain't gonna lie, when I first heard about it, you know, being in the ignorant mindset, then it was, I was cheering for it. Like, shit, he just went hard. You know what I'm saying? Especially after they said, goddamn, he was falsely accused and all that shit. I was like, shit, he did what he had to do. But as years pass by, you go to seeing like, nah, you grow more empathy the older you get. You know what I'm saying?
My name is Manny Aurora. I've been a lawyer in the Atlanta area for the last 30 years. I moved here back in 1984, went to high school a little bit south of Atlanta. Ended up going to grad school at Georgia Tech, was a nuclear engineer. Then I decided to go to law school at Georgia State University. I was also in the military, active duty for 4 years, and then a reservist for the next 20. I've been a prosecutor, been a defense lawyer, and done nothing but criminal law for my entire career. I was at my office in Buckhead when we heard the news that the courthouse shootings had taken place, and it was probably one of the biggest tragedies that I've ever experienced in my life.
December 10th, 1971, in Baltimore, Maryland. Brian Nichols was born to parents Claretha and Jean Nichols.
I was as close to any other normal child, both of them worked and had jobs, and we went to school, and so, I think in the 70s and 80s, I think they called it like latchkey kid kind of thing where, you know, you were at school and your parents were at work. And so there was like almost like a limited time. It's probably the same way it is today. But like, you know, you end up spending a lot of time in the streets though. You know what I mean? Which can sometimes be a good thing, sometimes maybe not so good. A son is always going to stay closer to mom. You know, I think the truest thing for me, you know, I love me some mom, and I have an older brother.
Brian was his parents' second child. Being a kid brother to his older brother, raised in Baltimore in the 70s and 80s, he would face many of life's challenges.
According to the latest crime stats, 81.5% of all people killed in the city of Baltimore were black.
The slums of Baltimore are one of the most harshest environments to survive in without becoming a product of it. Nonetheless, the Nichols family kept their children into extracurriculum activities to combat the highly persuasive temptations of the street life.
Some of them feel as though when they don't have jobs and they can't take care of their families, they might as well be in prison.
Yeah, I was raised by mom and dad in the streets.
As a youth, football and karate was Brian's escape from his harsh realities. His parents signed him up as early as the age of 9 years old, and Brian stuck to it.
I started playing football when I was 9. Football got me up out of the streets. You know, I'm still in the streets, but like, it occupied enough time for me to have an alternative in the streets. Because really, like, I mean, when I look back now on like all of the people, all of the children that like grew up in that neighborhood, it's not a lot of us left, either dead or in prison or, you know, fucked up real bad on the drugs. But, you know, for me growing up, like, football was a way to get up out of there, you know, and it was. Instead of after school, instead of getting out and, you know, being in the streets, you know, after school, you know, you at practice. And then, you know, after practice, you're in the weight room. To play football, you got to do your schoolwork. And so, like, after that, you know, you got to maintain a certain standard in the classroom because you want to play football. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, the things that get you kicked out the game today were the things that we were encouraged to do. You know, like the technology for the helmets, like, you know, you might have a concussion and like it goes undiagnosed. And so even now, when I look at a lot of people that I played football with, like, you know, people are having problems still. I started with karate probably when I was about the same time I started with football, so like around 10 years old. And, you know, that was another outlet that, you know, got me up out of the streets, taught me how to fight.
Having fell in love with sports, Brian moved on to play football through elementary, middle, and high school, while also continuing his journey in karate. He graduated at a well enough grade point average to get himself accepted into a college in Pennsylvania called Kutztown University. There, he enrolled in the football program as well and continued his passion for the game.
I pretty much went to 3 colleges in 5 years. Played football 3 of those years. Out of high school, I went to this small Division II college up in Pennsylvania, Courthouse University. Stayed there for about 3 semesters. And then ended up back down to South Carolina with my parents and tried chance. And really just like, you know, staying in the gym and hard work, you know, ended up with a scholarship at another small college in South Carolina called Newberry College.
Even though college and football kept Brian out of the streets most of his upbringing, trouble would still somehow find him, which led to his first arrest on the campus of Kutztown University. After transferring to Newberry College in South Carolina, where his parents resided at the time, Brian had another run-in with law enforcement, which also led to his arrest on the campus once again.
You know, I grew up in Baltimore, and so I was a little black boy from the hood in Baltimore, going up to school in, you know, the mountains and, you know, Amish country, Pennsylvania. So, you know, it was a bit of a culture shock. Yeah, I mean, I had some, you know, I say I was targeted by the police, but, you know, neither here nor there at this point. You know, I had some issues that resulted in my life having a different kind of trajectory, because when, you know, you're a child and you got an adult that, you know, put you on paper for little stuff like disorderly conduct and, you know, not having an ID, trying to buy a beer, you know, little stupid stuff. One was terroristic threats.
Terroristic threats and similar outbursts are just one of many first signs of a condition that may or may not come along with playing a linebacker position on the football field for over a decade.
There's no more debate about whether or not this is a problem in football. It is a problem, and we need to come together and find solutions for this problem.
During that time in Brian's young life, developing CTE from too many shots to the head had not been familiarized in football players as of yet. This condition has led many athletes to suicide and, more notably, mass killings.
A new study published in Annals of Neurology looked at the brains of 246 deceased amateur and professional football players. 211 of them had the degenerative brain disease known as chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE.
I snapped too. So it's your surrounding, like I was cool, calm. The CTE shit was all right through the first trial.
I believe it was a mental breakdown. I really, really do.
I think there is a concern that we're seeing accelerated disease in young athletes, whether or not that's because they're playing more aggressively or if they're starting at younger ages, we don't know.
When I was reading that book that was read, that book, Concussion, that was, you know, based on the Will Smith movie, Concussion.
I found a disease that no one has ever seen. Repetitive head trauma chokes the brain.
The NFL does not want to talk to you. You turned on the lights and gave their biggest boogeyman a name.
Now, when I was reading that book about the players that, you know, had died from CTE, it was like I was reading about myself. How guys, you know, having problems with alcoholism, drugs, memory loss, depression. You know, I just felt like I was reading by myself. So, you know, I'm one of those people that I know that when I pass away, if they haven't figured out how to find CTE in the brain before I pass, like, they'll find it in my brain. Like, there's no doubt about it.
And so researchers revealed today that former NFL player Philip Adams had this condition known as CTE, and he had it at the time that he shot and killed 6 people back in April, according to authorities. CTE is believed to come from repeated blows to the head, and it has been seen in professional athletes, including football players.
The only difference between me and some of the, you know, players that have had, you know, documented problems with the CTE is that, like, when it came to my psychotic episode, the psychotic episode is a symptom of CTE. The only difference between me is that I'm still alive, and a lot of players that after their psychotic episode, they die. They kill themselves or, you know, just die some kind of other way. But that's the only difference.
It says that this disease is not rare. In fact, 80-some% of the brains came in because of family members concerned about their loved ones. That says this disease is out there, this is a problem in football, and this is something we need to address as soon as possible.
It's concussions. It has to do with concussions and the effect on the brain. Now, I wanted you to show everybody what you found.
Here you see normal brain cells and no abnormal staining at all. Very, very consistent. Here we see a very small section of Chris's brain, and you see these brown areas here against a very, very striking brown background here. And all of this area is staining for damaged brain cells. These are dead brain cells.
From what I recall, at the trial for the murder case where the death penalty was on the table, his defense raised a lot of mental health issues.
Them folks don't want to hear nothing he got to say no more, dude. They don't want to hear no appeal, no medicine. They just, well, your ass gonna die.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, nicknamed CTE, is not curable. It is a progressive brain disorder that worsens over time, and it can only be diagnosed after death through brain tissue analysis. The best way to prevent CTE is to avoid head injuries. CTE is most commonly associated with professional athletes in contact sports like football, boxing, and ice hockey, but it can also develop in people who experience repeated head impacts, such as military veterans. While attending college, Brian enlisted in the Army and set to move forward with a career in the military.
Primary position in the military. Yes, Sergeant. I will never quit. In a single file. I will never leave a fallen
I was in military school, in elementary school. In college, I did ROTC, and I joined the reserves while I was in college. I signed up for the Army, I think, in Baltimore. Yeah, I signed up for the Army. After my first year in college, my parents moved from Baltimore to South Carolina. I didn't want to go down to South Carolina for the summer, and so I had the bright idea, okay, let's sign up for the Army. Signed up for the military in my mind in an attempt to not go down to South Carolina because it just didn't seem like it would be fun in South Carolina. But we ended up doing basic training at Fort Jackson in South Carolina, so I ended up in South Carolina anyway, which ended up being a very nice place. I love South Carolina. Was I on active duty while combat was going on? Yeah. I mean, I was a medical specialist, so yeah, every day, you're dealing with people that are having a bad day. I was honorably discharged from the military after 8 years. Did 8 years in Army Reserve and didn't sign up for another 8 years.
Around 1994, Brian moved to Atlanta, Georgia to begin a new life. It was the beginning of a new era in the city of Atlanta, and one of its most popular festivities, dubbed Freaknik, had young urban residents and nationwide visitors in the headlock.
I'ma get that beat, gotta have that beat, gotta have that beat. I'ma get that beat, gotta have that bitch. Hey, I got a data, shorty, your boy's a waiter. I'm saying we could do dinner, but you're the dessert.
This year, the kids were more peaceful than last. Police handed out 1,127 citations this year compared to 2,073 for Freaknik 96.
I found my future wife.
He just came out the hotel. He sat on the sidewalk down there. The first three. And he went to the next car to say, hey, gal just hanging out the back and the police stopped us. The day was a bad day. The day was in a bad mood.
She fresh, that fuck, she so big. She know she fine, she told shit. She get her bread, ride new shit. Don't get your cash, don't get your cash, baby. She fresh, that fuck, she so
we were living in Florida, down in Fort Lauderdale, And we moved from Fort Lauderdale up to Atlanta. I think that was like around the 90, it was before 94, 5, if I remember that. So it was like around 94, might have been 93, but probably 94. You know, I was on my grind back then. So, you know, I was working, I was doing security. And so, you know, my experience with Freaknik for the couple of years before they actually like canceled it was mostly just like being stuck in traffic trying to get to work. Kind of mad in the motherfucker being stuck in traffic trying to get to work, get my Freaknik on.
You know, the organizer, when I spoke to him earlier today, he really wants people here in Atlanta to know that you can celebrate Freaknik in a positive way. Remember this?
Walk down Peachtree, you know, you see cars. At the time, it was the hatchback. People, you know, getting out grilling. Everybody was selling. Everybody was getting money.
It's the infamous party that took over Atlanta's streets for years, known as Freaknik.
5 years since the announcement that transformed this city.
To the city of Atlanta.
It was a moment in history that would forever be a part of the city. As soon as the Freaknik ended in the spring of 1996, the Olympic Games and events started. Having tracked to become the next thrive.
Working in the X-ray machine, screening packages for UPS, actually. Wasn't working for UPS yet. I was working for a security company that was screening packages for UPS. And then there was a bombing incident.
When the bomb thundered through Centennial Olympic Park.
Once that happened, then I got an assignment down at Centennial Park. Actually doing security at the hotel, that's when I met Omarosa, and we hung out. We hung out for pretty much almost like that last week of the Olympics before she went back up. So I think she was living in Cincinnati or something like that.
After the Olympics ended, Brian's security detail continued with UPS.
I worked for a UPS, they called it a supply chain solutions organization that pretty much ran like the networks and databases for UPS. So I wasn't in a warehouse. Really, it was a huge, I think it's like one of the largest data centers in the country. Worked there for a couple of months before I got arrested. Before that, I was at Hewlett Packard. Doing pretty much the same thing, network system administration.
Throughout these moments in Brian's life, he kept himself God-fearing and a devout member of the church. Although it may come as a surprise to most, religion has always been a huge part of Brian's life.
Religion has always been an important part of my life. As a child, I went to Catholic school, got kicked out of Catholic school for asking about Black Jesus. You know, and I think it was like in the 80s, that was like, I first started to hear about things like the Black Hebrew Israelites. And so, you know, I had a friend that was looking into, you know, the teachings of Black Hebrew Israelites and talking to him one day. He tells me that, like, Jesus is Black. And I'm like, no, you know, because I go to Catholic school, and so every day I'm seeing a picture of white Jesus. And so I'm like, no, Jesus is white because you got a picture of him in the room. It's like every day you walk by the picture of white Jesus, Jesus is white. And so, you know, we go back and forth. And he shows me some things in the encyclopedia and stuff, talking about like how he wasn't like the region of the world where he lived. People were of different complexions. Me being who I am, you know, when I got back to school the next day, and you know, we got to take religion class every day in Catholic school. You know, first thing on my mind is, you know, what's up with that? Why y'all got a white Jesus picture of white Jesus up there like that, and Jesus was Black? And so I ended up, you know, getting pretty much kicked out of school behind that.
In 1997, Brian met what he thought to be his soulmate at the time, and their love for each other flourished for 8 years to come. As they grew together in time, ultimately, they grew apart at heart. And what was once a fairy tale love story had eventually become a toxic reality show relationship.
We were together for, I think, about 8 years. It was fun at times. Did a lot of traveling. I think in life, a lot of times with relationships, people just grow in different directions. Things became toxic. I can't claim to be 100% innocent in my role in that toxicity. No matter what happened, right? Whether or not I did everything that I was accused of or I didn't, no matter what, when I got into a courtroom, I should not be treated differently because of the color of my skin or because I'm poor or don't have a lot of money. It's a toxic. Like I said, I wasn't like an angel. I wasn't 100% interested. You know what I mean? Like I was telling her, I got another girl pregnant. Yeah.
Brian and his girlfriend at the time were in fact on the rocks, but that did not stop them from being intimate with each other. He met another woman during this time of turmoil in his relationship, and his new love interest became pregnant with his child. It's not clear on exactly how things transpired, but it has always been Brian's stance that his girlfriend at the time put a rape claim against him once she was made aware of Brian's unborn child growing inside another woman's body. At that point in Brian's life, everything changed, and he was arrested and made to stand trial for the sexual assault allegations.
What I wanted was to be found not guilty. I didn't understand how I could possibly, how anyone could have had any possible questions after, it demonstrated that, witnesses are not telling the truth and police are not telling the truth. Prosecutor is not telling the truth. This is not just me saying they lying and, you having to guess about their lying. I mean, they getting caught. Should have been, the charges really should have been dismissed. Once you observe the prosecuting person is supposed to be impartial. Once you observe them making false statements and getting caught in front of the jury, making false statements, it's like making stuff up. And that's what she said when she said happened. I said what I said happened. Just report what people have said. Don't try to start making stuff up and change stuff around. And so yeah, I think it should have been gone after that first trial. Because the people that voted not guilty heard the lies and couldn't believe that the prosecutor or police was just telling making stuff up. I think that when it ended in the mistrial, the judge pretty much said that once it was a mistrial, he said, okay, we're gonna come right back. I want this to be over with. We're gonna come back and have the trial next week, right? And so, no, the mom wasn't even discussed because it was okay, I'm keeping them in jail and we just gonna have a trial next week, which was crazy because in the second trial, we didn't even have transcripts from the first trial.
On the morning of March 11th, 2005, Brian Nichols and other inmates from Fulton County Jail were transported to the Fulton County Courthouse. Brian denies being under the influence of any type of drugs at that time and did not specify if he had any premeditated thoughts about what was about to take place and change the history of Atlanta forever.
Going to court, you chained up to a whole bunch of other black people, goddamn cows, it herded into tight spaces, but there was a fight or something in one of the holding areas that it's standing room only. You always touching another person. It's so many people chained up in the room. One of the deputies came in and just sprayed the whole room and closed the door. So this was fights and mace and chains. That's what they do for a living. I've never been that person that get mad quick. It takes a lot for me. It was a deterioration that like happened over some time.
You can put a person in a certain situation, man, and not know what they going through mentally.
I think that Brian got a taste of the reality of what it is to be a black man, and he snapped.
I'm not sure what snapped for Mr. Nichols or what the mental health issues were. A lot of that stuff was raised at his trial for the murders. But yeah, I don't see how you can conflate those two things. One is, dragging people by force into a slavery situation. One is you're in custody because you've been accused by somebody of committing a crime. You've had the protections of the processes. You had a very good lawyer. And frankly, he could have very easily won that case had he let the case continue.
Triggers is a motherfucker, bro. That's why I don't go certain places and do certain shit. A lot of niggas wasn't like that at first. I hate when niggas be like, bro, I know that nigga from school, he ain't like that. Bro, that don't mean nothing, bro. Shit shifts. You know what I'm saying? I know a bunch of killers and niggas first time. It's always going to be a first time to be first time, right? He just ain't like that. Yeah, ain't nothing made him be like that. Everybody got something in them that'll push them over the edge.
In the book Dutch, he basically kills everybody in the courtroom and escapes. And it does remind you of Brian Nichols in a lot of ways. When I look back on the writing at that time, because of living in the inner city, that Black men had serious issues with the criminal justice system and were just really, really being denied so much of life's opportunities because of their involvement with the criminal justice system. And I was really at that time, and I would say even earlier, going back into the 90s, I was just tired, literally exhausted of hearing it. And ever since then, as a Black woman, I've just heard constant gripes about the criminal justice system and what Black men feel, just basically being railroaded by it in life.
We need to keep the facts straight. Yes, he could have felt like, he was being prosecuted unjustly, but he had a lawyer, he had options, he had choices, he would have appeals, he could have been acquitted.
It's looking at the story and understanding the perspective is that he really was innocent, and so he's being put in a box, and he's being, Fulton County or wherever he was initially being held, I'm sure for him, the little bit of history that I had, he was actually working, making like a 6-figure salary or something. This guy had a really good life. He had this girl, he had this other girl, and the other girl gets pregnant, and then this girl says she's like raped. I mean, it's a lot to that for me on a reality thing.
I don't see in any world where what Mr. Nichols did is the equivalent of somebody that's being held as a slave and fighting back is the same thing. Mr. Nichols was in the court system. He had a good lawyer. Chances were, based on what I'd seen, this was a retrial of the same case that the jury had hung on. He might have been acquitted.
I feel like artistically, he influenced the culture because a form of rebellion is, that's for one. And for two, is like, shit, no matter good or bad, this nigga created history. Nigga, we sitting here talking about this shit. This will never go. This gonna go down in history just like goddamn Jesus, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, nigga George Floyd. They gotta say Brian Nichols.
To do what he did by overpowering a deputy, taking your gun, shooting the judge, the court reporter, innocent people, it makes no sense. It takes a step back for all of us that are fighting for equality in the criminal justice system. And while some people may think that he's some type of positive person for doing this or he's fighting for us, it's just misguided, and the fact that that message is even getting put out there is only going to make it harder and harder to see any change come out, and in fact I think it makes it worse, and people get more rigid in their stereotypes.
I mean, the conditions, everybody know about Rice Street, and how bad the conditions are.
And a family says a man was found dead, covered in bugs, inside his Fulton County jail cell.
Yeah, you know, the lawyer representing the family of LaShawn Thompson tells me this is one of the most inhumane inmate deaths he has ever encountered. The family wants the public to see the poor conditions they say their loved one endured while here at the Fulton County Jail.
We know about that now, right? You know, somebody died, you know, got ate to death by bed bugs, and, you know, all kinds of, you know, unfortunate conditions at the jail.
On this day in court for Brian was the 5th day of his second trial, after the first one ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. In the first trial, some of the jurors found that Brian was guilty, and others found that he was not guilty. The judge denied a bond and also denied a plea bargain for Brian to accept. Instead, the judge set Brian's retrial for a week after the verdict was returned on the first trial. Now, at almost the end of his second trial, Brian's mental health had completely collapsed. Unaware of Brian's mental state and capabilities, Deputy Cynthia Hall escorts Brian by herself to change his clothes for the court proceeding.
Before you go to, when you're on trial and you got to appear in front of a jury, they were letting you have like different clothes so you didn't have to appear in like the jail clothes. The holding area is like in the bottom floor of the courthouse where the Mace incident occurred. It's just like a holding area. It's like several rooms where they keep just like packed tight with people. Business is always good. But you got to come upstairs to go to the courtroom, and so there was a room upstairs, right? I think.
Within a blink of an eye, while unshackled to change his clothes, Brian Nichols seized on the moment and attacks Deputy Cynthia Hall. The assault was so extreme that he knocks the female officer unconscious and takes her handcuffs, radio, keys, and pistol.
The mental state that I was in at that particular moment and period, it's hard to bring logic to a situation that's not logical. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, we struggle trying to make sense out of shit that don't make no sense. You know, sometimes shit just don't make no sense. There have been like several female officers. The one that I assaulted escorted me several times. Other female officers had escorted me several times. It wouldn't, on that day, it wouldn't have mattered like who it was, whether it be a female officer or one of the male officers. It wouldn't matter who they were.
Now armed and on the loose in free world clothing, Brian makes his way to the judge's chambers. As he crosses the bridge that connects the inmate holding facility and the courthouse, he sees the courtroom bailiff, Sergeant Grantley White, and holds him at gunpoint. Brian then relieves Sergeant White of his service weapon and forces him to lead Brian into the judge's chambers. Fearful for his own life, Sergeant White does exactly what he is told. At this moment of the incidents that took place on that day, Brian has trouble remembering some of the details surrounding it. Other details are just too horrific for him to speak on and relive. When asked does he remember going into the judge's chambers, he answered,
I remember a lot of unfortunate incidents and complications that they really don't like to even speak word and bring all of that misfortune back into existence. So, yeah, you know, I was there that day. I did a lot of things that were uncharacteristic of me. I'm dealing with consequences.
From the witness's perspective that day, Brian entered the chambers with Sergeant White in front of him under the gun. The two legal aides that were in there started to scream at the sight of Brian holding Sergeant White captive. Brian demanded that they be quiet and get down on the ground. Then, Brian ordered Sergeant White to handcuff them with his own set of handcuffs. Once Sergeant White did what he was told, Brian handed Sergeant White Deputy Cynthia Hall's bloody handcuffs and told Sergeant White to handcuff himself to the judge's desk. Sergeant White took this opportunity to fake a panic attack as he fell behind the judge's desk and tripped the silent alarm button. Brian then assisted Sergeant White with handcuffing himself and took his radio as response calls came in from the alarm. Brian responded on the radio trying to sound like Sergeant White that everything was okay, but he did not know the right codes to use.
I don't recall saying that it was a false alarm. They use codes on the radio. I remember getting on the radio, and I remember not knowing the codes. So, yeah, that's a recollection of all that.
Now racing against time from the emergency response, Brian left the chambers and made his way to the courtroom in search of the judge. He exits the door that will lead directly to the judge's bench in open court and sees Judge Roland Barnes sitting in his chair facing the empty courtroom. Without the judge seeing it coming, Brian pulls the trigger, killing the judge instantly with a shot to the side of his head. The judge's court reporter, Julianne Brandow, whom was sitting at her station down on the ground level in front of the judge's bench, let out a terrified, horrific scream.
2 gunshots are heard on the tape. Relatives of the victims wept as they listened.
Brian Nichols silenced her as well with 1 shot, 1 kill also. When Brian was asked what if he had seen the prosecutor, an ex-girlfriend who made the rape case against him in the courtroom also, when the judge and court reporter were shot dead, Brian answered.
In that middle state, there's no telling what might have happened. All I can say about that is that I would like to think that there would not have been any further violence. And I'm glad that, as unfortunate as the situation was, I'm glad that it wasn't worse.
After the shooting death of Judge Roland Barnes and court reporter Julianne Brandow, Brian Nichols jumped down from the judge's bench and made his way towards the fire exit. Once in the stairwell on the 8th floor, he ran down to the lobby level as he could see and hear Sergeant Hoyt Teasley chasing behind him. Brian exited the fire escape to an empty lobby, since most officers were dispatched up to the 8th floor when Sergeant White sounded the panic button alarm. Brian stood idle right outside the door of the courthouse and shot Sergeant Hoyt Teasley dead as soon as he came crashing through it. With now 3 dead, 3 handcuffed, and 1 in a coma with severe brain damage, Brian Nichols made his way down the steps of the courthouse and back to the streets of Atlanta. It was said in reports that Brian carjacked someone on the street, right in front of the courthouse, then drove that vehicle a couple of blocks down into a public parking lot. Once there, he carjacked another person and drove that car to the public transportation station, parked it, then got on the train.
Stole a couple cars that day. Stole a couple cars that day. Yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. Pretty much how it went down.
Having eluded law enforcement with an elaborate escape and sending them into a frenzy, Brian made his way outside the city of Atlanta to a different metropolitan town, where he ran into a young woman of color and tried to force her back inside her home for refuge. The woman panicked and resisted, and miraculously, Brian chose not to harm her or press the issue.
There was another girl, but she wasn't white, though. Arab or African, I think she was African, Somalian or something.
Brian continued his flee to Duluth, Georgia, and spotted a guy with a truck working on a vacant home. Not knowing that immigration agent David Wilhelm was an officer of the law, Brian attempted to rob him, tie him up, and take his truck. While watching his surroundings, waiting for Agent Wilhelm to comply, Bryant found himself staring down the barrel of a gun. Agent Wilhelm had drawn his weapon on Brian and attempted to pull the trigger several times, but the gun malfunctioned. In return, Brian Nichols shot and killed Agent David Wilhelm, leaving him dead and taking his belongings.
Tywin Lannister said that the lion doesn't care about the problems of the sheep. I am not a lion. You know what I'm saying? That's a wolf in sheep clothing. I ain't gonna tell motherfuckers I'm a wolf. Just don't fuck with me.
Now, in Agent Wilhelm's truck, Brian stops at a local gas station still in Duluth, Georgia, to get some beer. He's in serious need to find a safe haven until he can figure out his next move. Brian parks the truck in an apartment complex to scope out his next victim. He sees Ashley Smith walk out her home and get into her car to leave. Brian patiently waits for someone to be returning home so he can force his way inside and hold them captive long enough to formulate a plan. Shortly after, once he sees Ashley Smith returning alone, he knew then and there that she will become his shelter for the evening. Brian gets out the truck and makes his way to Ashley, forcing her inside her home at gunpoint, undetected. Once inside, Ashley starts killing Brian with kindness. She offered to make Brian something to eat to relax him. Brian asked Ashley did she have any weed, and she told Brian that all she had was some meth for him to take. Reluctant, Brian ended up taking Ashley up on her offer. The two spent the evening getting high off meth and talking their problems out with each other. Instead of the upper drug cranking Brian up more, it actually acted as a downer and mellowed him out.
I was trying to find some weed. She didn't have no weed. She had some crystal meth. I had never done crystal meth before, but, you know, it was a crazy night, and so, you know, I was supposed to do something. And so when I asked her if she had any weed, she said, no, I got meth. I was like, that? Like, what do you do with that? Like, you smoke it? You know, like, what do you do with it? And, like, she kind of, like, chopped it up for me, and was like, you know, you snip it or whatever, but she thought that shit was going to make me even more crazy than what I already was, and I guess that's what crystal meth does. Like, it kind of had the opposite effect on me that night. Like, it like calmed me all the way down. It had kind of the opposite effect on me that night. And I haven't done it since. The thing about being on the run is that it really ain't no fun. You're on the run, you can't contact nobody that you know.
Brian knew that eventually Agent Wilhelm's truck and cell phone would lead authorities directly to his location, so he convinced Ashley to follow him in her car to go and dump the truck. They did so, parking the truck at a nearby gas station not too far from the apartment complex. And Brian also left the agent's cell phone in the back of the truck. Now, in the car with Ashley, they returned to her home and spent the night with each other. Early in the morning, they got up and prayed together. Then Ashley cooked Brian breakfast. When they turned on the TV, Brian Nichols seemed to be plastered on every channel, with a reward for upwards of $50,000 if the information led to his arrest. Ashley asked Brian if she could go and pick up her kid and come right back, and Brian didn't resist.
God placed her in my life to get me stopped doing what I was doing. And God placed me in her life to get her to stop doing what she was doing. You know, we all have a purpose. Hopefully that purpose can be something that brings positivity and love into the world.
Shortly after Ashley left Brian alone in her home, the police had the place surrounded due to a call placed by Ashley Smith. Without any further incident, Brian Nichols surrendered himself to the authorities for the assault on Deputy Cynthia Hall and the killings of Judge Roland Barnes, court reporter Julie Ann Brandow, Fulton County Sheriff Sergeant Hoyt Teasley, and Immigrations Agent David Wilhelm. The 26-hour manhunt for America's worst nightmare had ended.
A lot of people don't know this, but, letting her go was a part of what I had planned at the time. Let her go, let her call the police. I had a car already ready nearby. That whole thing was calculated. God put people in your life. And so I think at that moment, God spoke to me and told me I needed to trust him and stop. And I had to trust him. Even though I was, at the time, I was mad at God. I was mad at God. If we're speaking honestly, like, there have been things that we see that happen to other people, or maybe things that happen to, like, someone we love or ourselves, and, we question God, like, God, what's up with that? Why are you allowing that? I was going through my mad at God phase, and but God brought me back.
It's two different answers I'm going to give, you know what I'm saying? Because I can see that then, but now I can't see that, because at the end of the day, you could have just kept fighting the system. And I can't put myself in his mindset because I'm not there. But at the time, I could see myself being there.
Judge Barnes may have been the last person any defendant would be unhappy with. He gave you a fair trial. He was super, super easygoing. Listened to what the defendants had to say. He wasn't a harsh sentencer, and he was the judge, if you could get in front of, to know that you were going to get a fair shake in whatever happened. And he was truly in the job because he loved it. It's what he wanted to do. He wasn't using it as a stepping stone for anything else. He actually enjoyed being a Superior Court judge, and he enjoyed dealing with cases, and he enjoyed making a difference in people's lives. I'd had some minimal interaction with his court reporter. She was always very pleasant, but normally lawyers and court reporters, we don't talk that much because they're just taking down everything, and they're busy with their job, and we're running around with other cases.
Oh, they were trying to say now that the judge was going to let him go, right? I think that's just something to torture you while you in there. You don't did this, you don't make this dumbass decision. So we're going to torture you like you was about to be let go. For him to lose his faith, he had to know he wasn't finna come home, in my mind.
There's no way for us to know if the Judge Barnes was going to give a directed verdict or not, but the case wasn't the strongest. I think, like I said, he had a pretty good lawyer, and the case had already mistried one time prior to the second time when the shooting took place. So, again, something must have snapped inside Mr. Nichols. I don't know why. He could have very well been acquitted and been out on the street and free.
I think that if you've never been incarcerated or you've never led that kind of life, you've not been locked up, you've not been confined, you've not been treated or subjected. You know what I mean? You're not even like $100,000 a year. You eat out every night. You eat the best foods. You have the best life. You have a good life. You can't lock somebody up and then have them thinking that they're going to lose the rest of their life because of what somebody else does or says, and expect them to be able to, possibly mentally be strong enough to survive that. They might not be able to.
Shit, a nigga in jail feel like, hell yeah, he Nat Turner. A nigga who locked up, bro, you a hero. You're a martyr. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real. Like, any nigga that's been fell victim to that system, like, I had so many people that fell victim to the system. I've been locked up before, all type of shit. So, at the time, hell yeah, but I don't feel like I'm going to jail no more. I don't feel like I'm gonna ever even do nothing to go to jail. In the criminal mind state, hell yeah, you Nat Turner. I feel like the reason why they got him back there on death row, and you know what I'm saying, and like I said, my partner, he don't have a death sentence, but he's back there because them niggas know y'all able to spark a nigga to want to be a Brian Nichols. You know what I'm saying? Like, Brian Nichols in the chain gang, he damn near probably a god, probably. You know what I'm saying? Like, so just imagine him in the day room regular, the shit they gonna conspire. That's how these people think. Like, Bro, you just got away and got out the courtroom. You didn't get killed, nothing. You got away damn near. So just imagine niggas saying like, these niggas are already strong niggas in them chain gang. They stronger than the CO. All right, bro, we finna bust out that bitch now. So I feel like they do that just to keep the influence down. The real influential inmates. You know what I'm saying? We want to keep y'all niggas away because they scared. They scared of them. Hate it or love it. Brian Nichols is a part of Atlanta history now. You know what I'm saying? Even though he did some negative shit, he still taught them folk that, hey, y'all slipping. Y'all better get this shit together because this can happen. It'll never happen again. You know what I'm saying? That shit, that would never happen again. So basically, he just showed them folks y'all slip with Sean. Ain't no way in the hell he supposed to did. Been able, not supposed to. He ain't supposed to be able to do that and to get away. He just showed them, I feel like that's a lesson learned. Y'all had a hole in the system. I think it's gonna be more things like this, books and documentaries and things. Sad to say, but his name gonna live on because that ain't gonna never happen again. Probably nowhere. I've never seen it happen. I never thought it could happen. You know how many niggas done thought of doing that? You know what I'm saying? I seen niggas punch their lawyer out when they lose, like, bro, I lose, I'm gonna beat my lawyer ass. They're just straight up, he the closest nigga to him, I'm gonna beat that nigga. I seen niggas throw chairs and do all type of shit. But to actually take the scrap, kill some people, leave, kill some more people, turn yourself in peaceful like dying? That's cold. Brian Nichols a cold nigga.
Everybody complains, and rightfully, that there's some bias within the justice system. That's not a big secret. But violence isn't going to fix that problem. It's not going to reach the ears that need to be, that need to hear this in order to fix some of the problems with our statutes, some of the procedural issues that we have, as well as the people that, work as DAs or even judges to make sure we get parity in the legal justice system. What troubles me is the fact that this horrible thing happened, and for some reason, Mr. Nichols is being used and almost being glamorized in the hip-hop scene with a lot of the rap lyrics that come out there. And I just don't think it sets the right tone for people, where it's almost sensationalizing what happened instead of taking it for the tragedy that it is. We all want change in the system, but promoting violence or encouraging it or singing about it in a positive fashion isn't the right way to go. It should be documented, it should be discussed, but it shouldn't be held up to be something, positive or good or something to be looked up to, or somehow you're fighting back by killing innocent people.
I think Brian Nichols is idolized or by the culture. I ain't just say the rap industry, just the culture, like, because we rebellious. You know what I'm saying? We rebellious. We look at it, you know what I'm saying? We get our chance. We won't get back. Like, people looked at that, what he did, as a form of, like you just said earlier about the Nat Turner, they look at that as a form of we being enslaved by the system. So, yeah, we can take the chains off. You know we gonna take them off. And so, even niggas on the record label, they feel as if though, like, they slaves. So, anytime you see a nigga go that hard or drop their nuts, you gonna praise that. Like, it's so many, that nigga naming all type of songs. He's a hero to some niggas. He's being real.
I mean, the rap industry has come under fire lately because of all the gang connections that the prosecutors across the country are trying to tie into it. And having listened to some of these songs, it just sort of hurts me a little bit because I want to see change in the system. But glorifying violence or saying Brian Nichols was fighting back against his oppressors, that's just going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody in any position of power or legislation is going to change based on something as absurd as that. You can talk about what happened, but it just doesn't make any sense to me to glorify it. As a minority, I want to see things change, and this just isn't going to be the way it gets done. If anything else, it's going to make people more biased or stereotyped against us. And so I just find it a very poor use of the music community. You can document it, you can talk about it, but why are we glorifying it and cop killing is great and all that kind of stuff? It just doesn't make any sense, and it's actually going to backfire on us.
From a street life and hip-hop culture's perspective, Brian Nichols was idolized for his heroic and brave rebellion against the justice system and the powers that be, to whom acted as the gatekeepers, depriving him of his freedom. Even though innocent, everyday working people were hurt and lost their lives, the never-before act to violently challenge the government made everyone on the opposite side of the law turn Brian Nichols into a martyr. This is hardly the case. The fact that researchers shed light on Brian's mental health collapse from what seems to stem from his condition of CTE is absolutely contrary to most people's theory that Brian acted on pure evil thoughts and a malignant heart. Nevertheless, his mentions in the music industry will live on forever as a metaphor compared to the likes of Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and Nat Turner, the Black historians that rebelled against slavery and their oppressors. Mental health is real, and so is broken negligence due to the lack of education thereof. I am Terry Woods, and on behalf of our people living the street life on the opposite side of the law and our hip-hop community, myself and O'Murder Inc. offer our deepest condolences to the victims' families that suffered heartache from the Fulton County Courthouse killings that took place on March 11, 2005 in Atlanta, Georgia.
You know, it's so easy. Your mind's so fragile to tell, bro. You could tell your mind, like, I think he just wasn't in his right state of mind. Until he got to the white girl, like, damn, I done fucked up. That's like, cause you can snap, bro. Any of us in here, like, that's why mental health is real. We gotta buckle down. That's why I'll tell you earlier about the hikes. Like, I found my peace just walking in the woods, you know what I'm saying? And it's damn near, you gotta be a strong nigga to find your peace in that box. I don't even think, dude, that was him. Y'all believe in that? That people can have out-of-body experience and do shit and then come back and be regretted. The crazy part about it, I be thinking about, like, nobody heard Brian Nichols speak, right? And we can sit back and speculate how he feel or whatever. But doing this right here, shouts out to Vito, he made this happen. Y'all gonna be able to hear how he feel, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's gonna humanize him. That's gonna shift people's thoughts on what really happened. You know what I'm saying? We know what happened, but we don't know what happened right here. You know what I'm saying?
I think that it's wonderful that Vito is putting this together and invited me. And I just think that it's going to shed a lot of light, on the whole topic.
I just wish the best for everybody, man. I hate it for the families that lost, because they got to still watch these documentaries and hear people glorify Brian Nichols. But me personally, my opinion, I think Brian Nichols is not trying to glorify this. I think he feel like in the moment, that's what he felt he had to do. And looking back on it, I feel like he disappointed in himself, me personally. Cause when I talked to him, he didn't sound like a demon. He didn't sound like nothing. Hearing him tapes, he sound like a man that felt like he had no choice. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to make no excuse for no nigga. You know what I'm saying? He got to deal with the consequences. I'm not in there with him, but because I've made mistakes, you know what I'm saying? And I know everybody in here have. We all made mistakes, and not as big as his, but you never know how far your mind can take you, bro.
Loss is always something difficult, no matter how it comes. Obviously, some more so than others. I can only express my condolences, my apologies, and my regret for the role I played in the loss of their loved one. I can only hope that it's well received. This situation has changed everybody forever. For me, I know God's purpose leads me to testify to love, to mercy, and His grace. Because let me tell you, there is evidence of godly intervention and miracles throughout.